The rain was relentless, hammering the cracked pavement outside the diner as I stared at the text on my phone. I'm back in town. Can we talk? My heart lurched. A traitor to the calm I'd spent years building. Eli was back, me best friend. My almost something. The one who left without a goodbye 3 years ago. I sat in the booth. The neon glow of the diner's sign casting red streaks across my hands. Haven, Ohio. Hadn't changed much, same tired streets. Same whispers about who you were supposed to be. But I had. Or so I thought until that message lit up my screen, dragging me back to nights we'd spent driving nowhere, laughing under starlit skies, his hand brushing mine like an unspoken promise. The bell above the door jingled, and there he was, Eli, soaked from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, those green eyes still sharp enough to cut through me. He was 25 now, same as me, but the years had etched something new into him, confidence. Maybe. Or regret. Hey, Jamie, he said, sliding into the booth across from me, his voice softer than I remembered. You're late, I said, trying to sound steady, but my pulse was a drumbeat. I hadn't seen him since we were 22. Since that summer when everything almost happened, when we stood too close, spoke too quietly, and then he vanished to chase a job in Chicago. I'd spent years convincing myself I was over it. Over him. I'm sorry, he said, and it wasn't just about being late. His fingers fidgeted with the edge of a napkin, tearing it into strips. I didn't mean to ghost you. Things got complicated. Complicated, I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. You left, Eli. No call. No text. Just gone. He winced, and I hated how much I still cared about his pain. I know, he said. I was scared. Not just of leaving, but of us. What we could have been. The air between us thickened, heavy with words we'd never said. Growing up in Haven, we'd been inseparable, two kids who didn't quite fit the mold of a small town obsessed with football and church. I'd known I was gay since I was 15. But Eli, he'd always danced around it, flirting with the edge of something he wouldn't name. And I'd waited, stupidly, for him to figure it out. Why are you back? I asked, my voice low. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto mine. Because I missed you, Jamie. More than I thought I could miss anyone. My breath caught, and the diner faded, the clatter of dishes, the hum of voices, all of it gone. I wanted to hate him, to shove those words back at him, but they sank into me like rain into dry earth. You don't get to say that, I whispered. Not after 3 years. But he didn't look away. I mean it. I missed you too. And that's when everything finally changed. The next few days were a blur of tension and memory. Eli was staying at his mom's old house, just a few streets from mine. Haven was small enough that avoiding him was impossible. Not that I tried too hard. We fell back into old rhythms, grabbing coffee, walking the river trail, talking about everything except the thing that hung between us. But every glance, every accidental touch, felt like a spark waiting to ignite. I was working at the local library now, a job I'd taken after college when I realized I wasn't ready to leave Haven. It was quiet, safe, a place to hide from the questions I didn't want to answer. But Eli's return was like a stone in still water, rippling through everything. My coworkers noticed. Lila, the head librarian, kept giving me knowing looks when I'd check my phone for his texts. You're different since he came back, she said one afternoon, shelving books beside me. Different how? I asked, avoiding her eyes. Alive, she said simply. I didn't know how to respond. Eli had always been the one to pull me out of myself, to make me laugh until my sides hurt, to make me feel like I could be more than Haven's quiet gay kid. But he'd also been the one to break me, even if he didn't know it. That night, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, a six-pack of beer in hand. "Thought we could hang," he said, grinning like he used to. I let him in, and we sat on my couch, the TV flickering with some movie neither of us watched. Chicago didn't work out, I asked, sipping my beer to keep my hands busy. He shrugged, his expression tightening. It was fine. Good job. Decent apartment. But it wasn't home. Home's overrated, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Haven was home, flaws and all, and part of me hated that I still loved it. Eli set his bottle down, turning to face me. I didn't come back for Haven, Jamie. I came back for you. My heart stopped, then raced. Don't, I said, standing up, needing distance. Don't say things you can't mean. I mean it, he said, standing too, closing the gap between us. I was an idiot back then. I didn't know how to deal with how I felt. But I'm here now, and I'm not running again. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But trust is a fragile thing, and mine was still cracked from the last time. Prove it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm, and for the first time in years, I didn't pull away. The next week was like walking a tightrope. Every moment with Eli felt charged, like we were teetering on the edge of something irreversible. We didn't talk about that night on my couch, but his touch lingered in my mind, a quiet promise I wasn't sure I could trust. Haven's autumn was in full swing, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves. We spent Saturday at the town's harvest festival, a tradition we'd loved as kids. The square was alive with string lights, food stalls, and laughter, but all I could focus on was Eli beside me, his shoulder brushing mine as we navigated the crowd. "You remember when we snuck into the pie contest?" he asked, his grin mischievous. I laughed despite myself. "Yeah. And you ate half of Mrs. Carter's apple pie before she caught us." "Worth it," he said, and for a moment, it was like no time had passed. But then his hand grazed mine, and the world snapped back into focus. I pulled away, not ready to let myself fall again. That night, we ended up at the old quarry, a place we'd claimed as ours in high school. The stars were bright, the water below still and dark. We sat on the hood of his beat-up truck, sharing a blanket against the chill. "Why'd you really leave?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Eli was quiet for a long time, his breath visible in the cold air. "I was scared," he finally said. "Not just of you, but of myself. Growing up here, you know how it was. Everyone had an opinion about who I should be, and I didn't know how to be me and still be us." His words hit hard, stirring memories of whispered slurs in school hallways, of sermons that made me feel like I was sin personified. I'd come out at 18, defiant and terrified, and Eli had been there, my anchor, even when he couldn't name his own truth. "I thought leaving would make it easier," he continued, but it didn't. Every day in Chicago, I thought about you, about what I should have said. "Then say it now," I challenged, my voice shaking. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I love you, Jamie. I always have." The words were a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to grab them, hold them close. But fear clawed at me. You don't get to just say that, I said, sliding off the hood, pacing. You left me, Eli. You left me to deal with this town. With myself. Alone. I know, he said, following me. And I'll spend every day making it up to you if you let me. I stopped, my chest tight. What if you run again? I won't, he said, his voice fierce. I'm done running. He reached for me, and this time, I let him. His hand found mine, warm and steady, and when he pulled me close, I didn't resist. His lips brushed my forehead, a tentative question, and I answered by tilting my head up, our mouths meeting in a kiss that felt like coming home. But Haven wasn't a fairy tale. The next day, reality crashed in. We were at the diner again when Tommy Reed, a guy we'd known since grade school, walked in. He'd always been trouble. The kind of guy who threw punches first and asked questions later. His eyes landed on us, on the way Eli's hand rested too close to mine, and his smirk was a warning. Well, look at this, Tommy drawled, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Haven's favorite lovebirds back together. The room went quiet, forks pausing midair. I felt Eli tense beside me, but he didn't pull away. Mind your business, Tommy, he said, his voice low but steady. Tommy laughed, stepping closer. Oh, I mind. This town doesn't need your kind parading around. I stood, my hands balled into fists. Walk away, I said, my voice colder than I felt. Tommy's eyes narrowed. But before he could say more, Lila appeared, her librarian calm replaced by steel. Get out, Tommy, she said. You're not welcome here if you're going to start trouble. He left, muttering. But the damage was done. The diner's eyes followed us. Some curious, some hostile. Eli's hand found mine under the table. A quiet defiance. But I could feel the weight of Haven settling back on us. That night, I couldn't sleep. Eli's confession, the kiss, Tommy's words, they churned in my head. I'd fought to carve out a place for myself here, to be open about who I was. But Eli's return was stirring up old fears. Could we really do this? Could we be us in a town that still whispered? The next morning, Eli was at my door, his face serious. We need to talk, he said. About what happens next. Eli stood in my doorway, his jaw set, eyes searching mine. I'm not leaving again, Jamie, he said before I could speak. But I need to know if you want this because I'm all in. I pulled him inside, closing the door against the morning chill. My apartment was small, cluttered with books and half-finished sketches. But it felt smaller with him there, filling the space with his presence. You can't just decide that now, I said, my voice raw. Not after everything. I know, he said, sitting on the edge of my couch, hands clasped tightly. But I've had 3 years to think about what I lost. I was a coward back then, Jamie. I didn't know how to be honest with you, or myself. I sat across from him, my knees brushing his. And you do now. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. I came out last year. In Chicago. It wasn't easy, but it was the first step to figuring out who I am. And who I want to be with. The words hit me like a wave, washing away some of the anger I'd clung to. Eli. Out. Eli. Finally naming what I'd always sensed. But the relief was tangled with fear. Haven wasn't Chicago. Here, being out meant stares, whispers, sometimes worse. What happens when this town pushes back? I asked. Because it will. You saw Tommy yesterday. Eli's jaw tightened. Let them push. I'm not hiding anymore. And I'm not letting you face it alone. His words were a lifeline, but I wasn't sure I could grab it. I'd spent years building walls, protecting myself from the town's judgment, from the pain of losing him. Letting him in again meant risking everything. That afternoon, we walked to the river, the same path we'd taken 100 times as kids. The water was low, the banks muddy from recent rain. Eli stopped by a willow tree, its branches trailing into the current. This is where I first realized I loved you, he said quietly. Senior year. You were sketching the river, and I couldn't stop watching you. I remembered that day, his quiet presence, the way he'd teased me about my smudged charcoal fingers. I hadn't known then what it meant. But looking back, I saw it, the way he'd lingered, the way his laughter felt like a secret just for me. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, my voice catching. I was terrified, he admitted. Of you. Of this town. Of what it would mean. I thought if I ignored it, it'd go away. But it never did. We stood there, the river murmuring between us, and I felt the weight of his words settle into me. He wasn't just back, was here, choosing me, choosing us. But choosing us meant facing Haven. And Haven wasn't kind to people like us. The next few days were a test. We didn't hide, not exactly, but we didn't flaunt it either. We grabbed coffee, worked on my sketches together, drove out to the quarry again. But the town noticed. At the grocery store, Mrs. Larson, who'd known us since we were kids, gave us a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. At the library, a group of teenagers snickered when Eli dropped by to bring me lunch. It's starting, I told him one night, as we sat on my balcony, the town's lights flickering below. The whispers. The looks. Let them talk, he said, his hand finding mine. They don't get to decide who we are. But it wasn't that simple. The next day, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. Fags don't belong here. The words were scrawled in Sharpie, anonymous and vicious. My hands shook as I showed it to Eli. His face darkened, but he didn't flinch. We're not running, he said. This is our home too. I wanted to believe him, but fear was a living thing, curling in my chest. I'd faced this before alone. But now, with Eli beside me, it felt different. Stronger, but also more dangerous. That weekend, we decided to confront it head on. There was a town meeting about the community center, a place we'd both loved as kids. Eli suggested we go. Show up as ourselves. Not hiding. We don't have to make a scene, he said. Just be there. Together. I agreed. But my stomach churned as we walked into the crowded gym. Heads turned. Whispers followed. Tommy was there, his smirk back. But Eli's hand in mine was steady. We sat in the back, listening to debates about funding and renovations. But I could feel the room's eyes on us. When the meeting ended, a woman approached us, Mrs. Carter, the pie lady from years ago. I braced myself, but she smiled. You boys look happy, she said softly. Don't let anyone take that from you. Her words were a small light in the dark. But as we left, Tommy's voice cut through. You're not welcome here, he called, loud enough for everyone to hear. Eli stopped, turning to face him. We're not going anywhere, he said. his voice calm but unyielding. The crowd parted, and for a moment, it was just us against the world. Tommy's words hung in the air, a challenge that echoed through the gym. Eli's grip on my hand tightened. His eyes locked on Tommy's, unflinching. I wanted to pull him away, to avoid the fight I could feel brewing. But Eli stood his ground, and I couldn't leave him. "You got something to say? Say it," Eli said, his voice steady but edged with fire. Tommy smirked, stepping closer, his buddies flanking him. "This town's got standards. You two are a disgrace." The crowd was silent, watching, waiting. My heart pounded. Memories of high school flashing back, shoves in the locker room. Slurs hissed in passing. But this wasn't high school, and I wasn't alone anymore. "Enough." A voice cut through. It was Lila, pushing through the crowd, her small frame radiating authority. "This is a community meeting, not a bar fight. Take your hate somewhere else." "Tommy." A few people murmured agreement. Others looked away. But Tommy's smirk faltered. He muttered something under his breath and stalked off, his friends trailing behind. The tension broke, but it left a residue, a reminder of what we were up against. Outside, under the streetlights, Eli let out a shaky breath. "You okay?" he asked, turning to me. I nodded, but my hands were still trembling. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Stand up to him like that." "Yeah, I did," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not letting anyone make you feel small. Not anymore." We walked home in silence, the night heavy around us. At my door, Eli hesitated. "Can I stay?" he asked, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that made my chest ache. I let him in, and we lay on my bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. His hand found mine, and we stayed like that, the world outside fading. "I'm scared too," he admitted after a while. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." The next morning, we woke to a new reality. The note under my door wasn't a one-off. My car's windshield had "Go Back to Chicago" scrawled in soap, and Eli's truck had a dent in the hood. The town was pushing back, harder than I'd expected. "We should report it," Eli said, his jaw tight as we cleaned the windshield. "To who?" I asked. "Sheriff Daniels. He's Tommy's uncle." Eli's eyes darkened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the damage. "Evidence," he said, "just in case." That afternoon, we went to the community center, needing a break from the tension. The center was old but loved, its walls covered in photos from decades of Haven's history. We found one of us as kids, gap-toothed and grinning, arms slung around each other. "Look at us," Eli said, tracing the photo with his finger. "We were always this, weren't we?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah. We just didn't know it." We spent the day there, helping paint a mural for the kids' room. It was simple work, but it felt good, like we were building something instead of just fighting against it. The kids didn't care who we were, they just wanted to splash paint and laugh. For a few hours, Haven felt like it could be ours again. But the peace didn't last. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Leave or it gets worse." I showed it to Eli, and his face hardened. "We're not leaving," he said, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The next day, we went to see Mrs. Carter. She'd been kind at the meeting, and I hoped she'd know how to navigate this. Her house was a cozy bungalow, filled with the smell of fresh bread. She listened as we told her about the note, the car, the text. "This town's got good people," she said, pouring us tea. "But it's got its shadows too. You boys are shaking things up, and some folks don't like change." "What do we do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "You keep going," she said. "You show them you're not afraid. And you lean on the ones who've got your back." She told us about a support group in the next town over, for queer folks and allies. "They've been through this," she said. "They'll help." That night, Eli and I drove to the meeting. It was in a small church basement. A circle of folding chairs filled with people who looked like us, scared, hopeful, defiant. A woman named Sarah, maybe 30, shared her story of coming out in a town like Haven. "It's not easy," she said, "but it's worth it." Eli squeezed my hand, and I felt a spark of hope. Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could be us. Here. Now. But as we drove back to Haven, headlights followed us too closely, their glare a warning in the dark. The headlights stayed with us all the way to Haven, tailing close enough to make my skin crawl. Eli drove steady, his knuckles white on the wheel. But neither of us spoke until we pulled into my apartment's lot. The car, a beat-up sedan, slowed as it passed, its driver hidden in the dark. "They're trying to scare us," Eli said, his voice tight. "It's working," I admitted, my heart still racing. He turned to me, his eyes fierce. "We don't let them win, Jamie. We don't." But fear was a weight, heavier with each new threat. The next morning, we found another note taped to my door. "You're not safe here." I wanted to crumple it, burn it, but Eli kept it, adding it to his growing pile of evidence. "We'll need this," he said, his voice grim. We went to the library, seeking normalcy. Lila was there, her usual warmth tempered by concern when she saw our faces. "What happened?" she asked, pulling us into her office. We told her everything: the notes, the car, the text. Her face hardened. "This isn't just Tommy," she said. "He's got friends, people who think like him. You need to be careful." "Careful how?" I asked, frustration spilling over. "We're just trying to live." She sighed, her eyes soft. "I know. And I'm on your side. But this town, it's slow to change. You're pushing it faster than it's ready for." Eli leaned forward. "We're not backing down. But we need help. People who'll stand with us." Lila nodded. "I'll talk to some folks. The community center board. Mrs. Carter. A few others. You're not alone. Okay." Her words were a lifeline, but the fear lingered. That afternoon, we decided to lay low, sticking to my apartment. Eli cooked dinner pasta with sauce from a jar. The best he could don. We ate on the couch, trying to pretend the world wasn't pressing in. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked, twirling my fork. "Starting over somewhere else?" He looked at me, his expression soft. "I used to. But not anymore. This is home, Jamie. And you're here." His words warmed me, but they also scared me. Home was Haven, but Haven was fighting us. Could we really build something here? Or were we just setting ourselves up for more pain? The next day, we went back to the community center. The mural was almost done, bright colors splashing across the wall. A kid named Mia, maybe 10, ran up to us, her pigtails bouncing. You guys are boyfriends, right? She asked. All innocence. I froze. But Eli smiled. Yeah, we are, he said, his voice steady. Mia grinned. That's cool. My cousin's got a girlfriend. And they're super happy. Her words were a small gift. A reminder that not everyone in Haven was against us. But as we painted, I noticed a man watching from the corner. His eyes narrow. I didn't recognize him. But his stare was heavy. Deliberate. That night, we got another text, last warning. Eli's face was stone as he read it. We need to do something, he said, before this gets worse. We decided to meet with Sarah from the support group again. She suggested a public stand-a gathering. Not a protest, but a show of presence. Bring allies, she said. Show Haven you're not going anywhere. The idea was daunting, but it felt right. We spent the next day planning. Calling Lila, Mrs. Carter, and a few others who'd offered support. The community center agreed to host, and word spread fast. By evening, we had a dozen people committed small, but a start. The gathering was set for Saturday, in the center's courtyard. We spent Friday preparing, making signs with messages like love is love and Haven for all. Eli was a force, his energy pulling me along, but I could see the strain in his eyes. He was scared too, even if he wouldn't admit it. That night, we lay in bed, his arm around me. What if no one shows up? I whispered. They will, he said, kissing my temple. And if they don't, we'll still be there. Together. Saturday dawned bright and cold. We arrived early, setting up tables with coffee and pastries. Lila was there, then Mrs. Carter, then Sarah and a few from the support group. By noon, a small crowd had gathered, maybe 30 people. Some familiar, some strangers. Mia was there with her mom, holding a sign that read "Be kind." But across the street, Tommy and his crew stood, watching, their faces hard. My stomach twisted, but Eli's hand in mine kept me grounded. We've got this, he whispered. As Sarah spoke, sharing her story, I looked at the crowd. They were listening, some nodding, some wiping tears. For the first time, I felt like Haven might bend, just a little. But then a rock sailed through the air, shattering a coffee urn, and the crowd froze. The rock's crash echoed, shards of glass glinting in the sunlight. The crowd gasped, heads turning toward Tommy and his group across the street. He stood there, arms crossed, a smirk twisting his face. My heart pounded, but Eli's hand tightened around mine, anchoring me. Stay calm, Sarah whispered, stepping forward. Don't give them what they want. Lila was already on her phone, calling the sheriff. Mrs. Carter moved through the crowd, urging everyone to stay put. But the air was electric, fear and anger crackling. Mia's mom pulled her close, and I saw the girl's sign "Be kind" trembling in her hands. Who threw that? Eli called, his voice cutting through the tension. He stepped forward, shielding me slightly, his shoulders squared. Tommy laughed, but one of his buddies, a lanky guy with a busket, shifted uncomfortably. You're the problem, Tommy shouted. You and your little show. This isn't a show, I said, finding my voice. This is our home. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others stepping closer to us. Sarah raised her hands, calling for quiet. We're here to build community, she said. If you don't like it, you can leave. Tommy's smirk faded, but he didn't move. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up minutes later, and Daniel stepped out, his face unreadable. He crossed to Tommy, speaking low, and after a tense moment, Tommy and his crew backed off, disappearing down the street. The gathering continued, shakier but determined. People shared stories: Sarah, Lila, even Mia's mom, who talked about her cousin's struggle to be accepted. Eli and I stayed close, our hands linked, drawing strength from each other. By the end, the crowd was small but solid, a fragile hope taking root. That night, we collapsed at my apartment, exhausted but alive. "We did it," Eli said, pulling me into his arms. "Barely," I said, but I was smiling. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just fighting, we were building something. The next week was quieter, but the tension lingered. No more rocks, no more notes, but the stares didn't stop. We kept going: work, the community center, stolen moments at the quarry. Eli was painting again, something he hadn't done since high school, and I'd sketch beside him, our silences comfortable but charged. One evening, Lila called us to the library. She'd rallied the community center board, and they wanted to propose a new program, a safe space for queer youth. "You too inspired it," she said, her eyes bright. "We want you to help lead it." I looked at Eli, stunned. "Us? You're already doing it," she said. "Showing up, being yourselves. Kids like Mia need that." We agreed, nervous but excited. The program would start: small weekly meetings, art projects, a place to talk. It felt like a step toward changing Haven, not just for us, but for anyone who felt like they didn't belong. But the threats didn't vanish. One night, we found Eli's truck tires slashed. He stared at the damage, his face pale but resolute. "They're scared too," he said. "Scared of change." I wanted to believe him, but anger was building in me. I was tired of being scared, tired of hiding parts of myself to make Haven comfortable. "We need to push harder," I said. "Show them we're not going anywhere." Eli nodded, but his eyes were worried. "We will, but we need to be smart about it." The next day, we met with Sarah again. She suggested a bigger event, a pride picnic, open to everyone, with allies like Lila and Mrs. Carter leading the charge. "Make it undeniable," she said. "Show Haven what love looks like." We spent days planning, spreading the word through the support group, the library, even the diner. Mrs. Carter baked pies, Lila printed flyers, and Mia's mom rallied other parents. By the time the picnic rolled around, we had a small army: 50 people, maybe more, committed to showing up. The day of the picnic was warm. The community center's field bright with blankets and banners. Music played. Kids ran around. And for a moment, it felt like Haven could be different. Eli and I walked hand in hand, no longer caring who saw. But Tommy was there, on the edge of the field, his crew smaller but still menacing. I braced myself. But then Mia ran up, her sign now reading "Love Wins." "You guys are awesome," she said, hugging us both. Her mom joined us, her eyes fierce. "You're not alone," she said. "Not anymore." As the sun set, the picnic felt like a victory, small but real. But when we got back to my apartment, the door was ajar, the lock broken. Inside, my sketches were torn, scattered across the floor. The apartment was a wreck: sketches ripped to pieces, furniture tipped over, The word freak spray painted on the wall. My heart sank, each torn drawing a piece of me shredded. Eli's face was thunder, his hands shaking as he surveyed the damage. "We're calling the sheriff," he said, already dialing. I nodded, numb, picking up a sketch of the quarry we'd done together. It was torn clean through, our initials in the corner barely legible. This wasn't just vandalism, it was personal. Sheriff Daniels arrived, his face grim as he took notes. "Any idea who did this?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Tommy Reed," Eli said, his voice hard. "He's been after us since I got back." Daniels sighed. "No proof, boys, but I'll look into it." His words were hollow, and when he left, I felt the weight of Haven's resistance heavier than ever. Eli pulled me into a hug, his arms fierce. "They won't break us," he whispered. "I promise." We spent the night cleaning, salvaging what we could. Lila came by with coffee and trash bags, her silence a comfort. "You're staying with me tonight," she said. No room for argument. At her place, we crashed on her couch, too exhausted to talk. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept seeing that word freak burned into my mind. Eli's hand found mine in the dark, and I held on like it was the only thing keeping me afloat. The next morning, we went back to the apartment. Mrs. Carter was there, along with Sarah and Mia's mom, armed with paint and cleaning supplies. "We're fixing this," Mrs. Carter said, her voice firm. "This is your home." Their kindness broke something in me, tears I hadn't let fall in years. We painted over the graffiti, taped sketches back together, and by afternoon, the apartment felt like mine again. But the violation lingered, a shadow we couldn't erase. "We need to end this," I told Eli that night, my voice steadier than I felt. "No more waiting for them to come at us." He nodded, his eyes fierce. "We take the fight to them legally. We've got the notes, the texts, the photos. It's enough for a restraining order." The next day, we went to the county courthouse, filing complaints against Tommy and his crew. The clerk, a woman named Ellen who'd known my mom, listened quietly as we laid out the evidence. "I'll make sure this gets to the right people," she said, her eyes kind. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. Word of the filing spread, and by evening, the town was buzzing. Some called us troublemakers. Others, like Lila and Mrs. Carter, called us brave. The support group meeting that week was packed, new faces mixing with the regulars. Sarah introduced us, and we shared our story, the threats, the vandalism, the fight to stay. The room was quiet, then erupted in applause. A man in his 40s, a teacher from the next town, stood up. "You're giving us all courage," he said. "Thank you." His words stayed with me, a reminder that this wasn't just about us. We were fighting for Mia, for the kids who'd come after us, for anyone who'd ever felt like Haven wasn't theirs. But the fight wasn't over. Tommy and his crew were served with the restraining order, but they didn't disappear. We'd see them across the street, watching, waiting. Eli started staying at my place every night, his presence a shield and a comfort. One evening, we sat on the balcony, the town quiet below. "You ever wonder what we'd be like somewhere else?" I asked. He leaned his head against mine. "Sometimes. But I don't want somewhere else. I want you. Here. Now." His words were a vow, and I felt myself falling deeper. trusting him in a way I hadn't thought possible. We kissed, slow and sure, the world fading until it was just us. The next week, the community center's Safe Space program launched. We led the first meeting, a mix of nervous teens and curious allies. Mia was there, her sign now framed on the wall. We painted, talked, laughed, and for the first time, I saw Haven's future not perfect, but possible. But as we locked up that night, headlights flashed in the lot. The same sedan from before idled, its engine a low growl. Eli pulled me close, his voice steady. "We're not afraid," he said, loud enough for them to hear. The car peeled out, leaving us in the dark. But I knew this wasn't the end. The sedan's taillights vanished into the night, but the threat lingered like smoke. Eli and I stood in the community center's lot, our breath visible in the cold. "We need to be ready," he said, his voice low. "They're not done." He was right. The next morning, we found a brick through my apartment window, glass scattered across the floor. A note was tied to it, "Last chance." My stomach churned, but Eli's hand on my shoulder kept me steady. "We're going to the sheriff again," he said, already bagging the brick as evidence. "And we're not stopping until they're held accountable." Sheriff Daniels was less dismissive this time, his face tight as he examined the brick. "I'll bring Tommy in for questioning," he said, "but you boys need to watch your backs." It wasn't enough, but it was something. We spent the day at Lila's, planning our next move. She suggested a town hall, a chance to confront the hate head-on. "You've got more allies than you think," she said. "Let's show them." The idea was terrifying but necessary. We worked with Sarah and Mrs. Carter, spreading the word through the support group and the community center. By the time the town hall was set, we had a coalition: parents, teachers, even a few church members who'd quietly supported us. The night of the town hall, the gym was packed. Eli and I stood at the front, hands clasped, facing a sea of faces, some friendly, some hostile. Sarah spoke first, her voice clear and strong. "This town is for everyone," she said, "and we're done letting hate win." I went next, my voice shaking at first but growing steadier. "I grew up here," I said. "This is my home, and I'm not leaving just because some people can't handle who I love." Eli squeezed my hand, then took the mic. "I ran once," he said. "I left because I was scared. But I'm back, and I'm staying for Jamie, for us, for everyone who deserves to feel safe here." The room was quiet. Then Mrs. Carter stood, her voice carrying. "These boys are ours," she said, "and we protect our own." Applause broke out, not from everyone, but enough to drown out the murmurs of dissent. Mia's mom stood next, then Lila, then others, their voices weaving a net of support. Tommy was there, in the back, his face unreadable, but he didn't speak. The town hall didn't fix everything. The next day, we heard Tommy had been arrested not for the brick, but for a fight at a bar. Unrelated, but enough to keep him away for now. The restraining order held, and his crew scattered, their bravado fading. Haven didn't change overnight, but it bent. The Safe Space program grew. Kids like Mia showing up with their own stories, their own hopes. Eli and I kept painting, sketching, building a life together. We weren't naive. There'd be more fights, more shadows. But we had each other, and we had allies, and that was enough to keep going. One evening, months later, we drove to the quarry, the stars bright above. Eli pulled me close, his breath warm against my cheek. "I missed you," he said, echoing those first words that changed everything. "I missed you too," I said, and this time, I wasn't afraid to mean it. We stood there, the water reflecting the sky, and I saw our future not perfect, but ours. Haven was home, not because it was easy, but because we'd fought for it. Together, we'd carved out a space where love could grow, where we could be us, unapologetically. And that was worth everything.